When my daughter casually said, "Then my new dad is richer," this said I realized I wasn't set just losing the family. I was losing everything I had worked for. The words stung, cut through me like a knife, but I couldn't show it. I sat there surrounded by the warmth of the Thanksgiving dinner table pretending everything was fine. It wasn't. My heart was shattering into pieces and I wasn't sure I could even breathe. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you said are listening from. My daughter, my flesh and blood, had just announced to everyone that her new stepfather, a man who had walked into our lives like he owned it, was richer than me. A man who hadn't earned a single ounce of his wealth, but still found a way to make it seem like everything I had worked for was nothing. She wasn't even looking at me when she said it. No acknowledgement of the years I spent grinding, building this business from scratch, putting food on the table, being the father who had always tried. No, it was like I didn't exist anymore. "I've been proud of him," she said. Her voice warm with admiration. "My new dad is richer." The room froze. The sound of silverware clinking, the laughter, everything blurred into a distant hum. I felt my chest tighten, my heart sinking lower than it ever had. A wave of nausea washed over me. She wasn't just comparing him to me, she was choosing him over me. I had failed. I wasn't the man she looked up to anymore. I excused myself, barely managing a tight smile, as I pushed my chair back. The noise from the dining room was muffled behind me as I walked down the hallway, the walls closing in. When I reached my study, I slammed the door shut behind me, the quiet of the room swallowing me whole. I sank into my chair, my hand trembling as I clutched the glass of wine I hadn't even realized I'd poured. My reflection in the glass stared back at me, a man who had given everything to a family that had already moved on without him. My daughter, who used to look at me with such admiration, now found more value in the money a stranger had. I looked around the room, the files strewn across my desk. Old business records, invoices, reminders of a company I had once been proud of. But now, it was a sinking ship, dragging me down with it. My mind raced, filled with thoughts I didn't want to entertain but couldn't push away. I had worked so hard to provide for them, to build something that would last. But somewhere along the way, I had lost everything. My family, my respect. And now I had to face the truth. It wasn't just about business, it was about my daughter, my legacy, my own failure. I stared at the piles of paper, my mind flickering back to the early days. When I started this company, it was built on trust, on integrity. I had been proud of the fact that I could provide for my family. Now I was just invisible. But something else started to bubble up inside me, a flicker of something I hadn't felt in a long time. Betrayal. I had been wronged, and I could feel the rage building. I had spent so long thinking that just being there for them would be enough, that the love I poured into this family would be enough. But now I saw what the world truly valued: money, power, control. And my daughter was choosing him. My mind began to shift. I knew something about the man who had replaced me, something dangerous, something he didn't want anyone to know. His business wasn't just built on wealth. It was built on lies, corruption, illegal dealings that no one knew about. I had been blind, but now it was clear. There was a way out, a way to reclaim my dignity. I pulled open the drawer, sifting through old business receipts and contracts. I found what I was looking for: a legal document from one of the companies he had once worked with, a record of fraudulent transactions, disguised in innocent invoices. I slipped it into my drawer and underlined the date, August 12th, 2016. I couldn't let this go. Before I could even process what I was doing, I felt a rush of clarity. I had spent so long trying to do the right thing, to play by the rules, and look where it got me. Now I would play the game his way. I would take back what was mine, but I couldn't stop there. This wasn't just about getting my business back. This was about getting my family back, about showing my daughter that I wasn't the man she thought I was: weak and defeated. I had the power to tear his world apart, and I was going to do it piece by piece. The days after Thanksgiving were a blur. I couldn't shake the weight of her words. My new dad is richer. It wasn't just about money, it was about everything I had failed to be for her. I spent hours pacing the house in silence. The world outside continued as normal, but inside I was suffocating. Every minute I felt the sting of rejection, the deep-rooted fear that I had already lost my family, my daughter, the same girl who used to run into my arms after school, eyes wide with excitement, now saw a stranger as her hero. And who was I? A middle-aged man whose business was failing, whose family was crumbling. I couldn't look at her the same way anymore. Every laugh, every moment she spent with him, felt like another nail in the coffin of my life. I didn't matter anymore. She didn't need me, not when she had him. The man who could buy her anything she wanted, who could give her the life I could never provide. But even in the midst of this, something shifted inside me. I remembered who I was before this, before all the failures, before the endless nights spent trying to fix what couldn't be saved. I had always been a fighter, a man who clawed his way up, who worked tirelessly to ensure his family had everything. I wasn't going to let him take that from me. I wasn't going to let him take her. I started digging through old files in my office. The company's financial reports, balance sheets, tax documents, all of it. There had to be something. Something that would prove I wasn't just the man who lost it all. I needed to find a way to get back into this fight. As I flipped through stacks of paper, I came across an old email. It was from a business associate I hadn't heard from in years, someone I such trusted. It had been sent over a year ago. The subject line read, "Your company such is in trouble. We need to talk." I opened it. More in the email began. "I don't know if you're aware, but your stepdaughter's new husband has been doing some questionable business. I know you two don't see eye to eye, but I thought you'd want to know. There's something shady going on with his company. A lot of money and a lot of things you don't know about." I felt the blood drain from my face. What the hell was this? I scrolled through the message, my eyes scanning the details of a financial transaction, an offshore account linked to one of the companies the stepfather owned. This was it. This was the key. I knew he wasn't just a charming businessman. I knew he had secrets, but this was bigger than I thought. I felt a surge of anger course through my veins. This man had infiltrated my family, my life, and now I was going to take him down. I quickly picked up the phone and dialed the number of my old business associate. His voice crackled through the speaker when he answered. "Warren? Yeah, I need you to help me." I said, my voice steady despite the fury I felt inside. "I need everything you got on him. His company, his transactions, anything that can help me take him down." There was a long pause before he spoke. "Are you sure about this, Warren? This could ruin everything. It's SEP's not just about business anymore." "I don't stot care," I snapped. "I've lost everything already. If this man thinks he can take my place, he's SEP's wrong." We discussed the details, laying out a plan. It wasn't going to be easy, but it was the only way I could fight back. He promised to dig into the company's financials and find anything that could be used to expose the stepfather. Meanwhile, I would work on getting my hands on the documents I needed. Business contracts, any proof of manipulation or fraud. I hung up the phone, the weight of what I was about to do sinking in. I had never been this desperate, but the truth was clear. I couldn't just let this go. I couldn't let him have everything. I had to fight for what was mine, for what we had built together. And yet, even as I steeled myself for the battle ahead, I couldn't help but wonder what it would cost me. What would this do to my relationship with my daughter? Could I ever get her back after everything that had happened? I thought back to the old days when we'd sit together in the living room watching her favorite cartoons, when her laughter filled the house, when she called me daddy like it was the most important word in the world. Was I chasing something that could never be fixed? But then I remembered the email, the evidence I had in my hands. I remembered the way he had belittled me, taken everything I had worked for, and turned my daughter against me. No, I wasn't going to lose her without a fight. It was time to take back what was mine. But first I had to be sure. I had to get all the evidence, every detail, every transaction. And once I had it, I would go after him the way I knew best. Strategically, carefully, and with a vengeance. But I knew one thing for sure. This fight wasn't just for my business anymore. It was for my family, and I wasn't going to lose them without a fight. I sat in my office long after the sun had set, staring at the stacks of paper on my desk. Each sheet felt heavier than the last, laden with the weight of decisions I knew I had to make. My mind was racing, piecing together a plan that felt both like my salvation and my damnation. The next move had to be precise. I couldn't afford to make a mistake. The stepfather, let's call him Tom, had been playing his game for years, hiding behind wealth, charm, and the illusion of power. But I wasn't playing for the same stakes anymore. I had nothing left to lose, and everything to gain. I stood up and walked over to the window, watching the city lights flicker below. Los Angeles was as busy as ever, but all I saw was the reflection of the man I had become. The betrayal still burned, but now I had a purpose. It wasn't about being a father anymore. It was about winning. It was about taking everything he had and giving it back to the one person who deserved it most, me. I took a deep breath and pulled up my laptop. The email from my old associate had been the spark I needed, and now it was time to fan that flame. The first thing I needed was to establish leverage. I had already gathered some evidence, but it wasn't enough. The financial fraud was clear, but I needed more. I needed something that would make Tom tremble in his boots, something he couldn't brush off as a misunderstanding. I picked up the phone and dialed the number of my former business associate, the one who owed me everything. It rang twice before he picked up.
Warren,
His voice crackled, barely audible over the noise in the background. What do you need now? I need you to get everything on him. I said, my voice low, cold. I want to know how his company really works. Everything. The hidden accounts. The backdoor deals. Anything I can use. He paused for a moment. You sure about this? This isn't set going to be easy. You still be playing with fire. I don't, Terry. I snapped. If I sem going down, I sem taking him with me. I could hear the hesitation in his voice before he responded. All right, I shall get on it, but you sept you're asking for more than I can just pull out of thin air. It's septure's gonna take time. Just do it, I said, closing my eyes for a moment. I needed this to work. There was no turning back, not anymore. As I hung up the phone, I felt the weight of the decision settle over me. This wasn't just business anymore, it was personal. And that's what made it dangerous. The next day I was on the phone with my lawyer, a man I'd worked with for years. We had been through enough legal battles together to know each other's strengths and weaknesses. Warren, I have been going through the papers you sent me, he said. You stare on solid ground here, but it's sup's going to take time. You stare'll need to be patient. A hostile takeover isn't sup's as simple as it sounds. I don't still have time, I said, my voice sharp. This is more than just business. I set not walking away from this. Well, you have to be strategic. I can help you get the evidence, but we need to follow the legal channels. I still start digging into Tom Sip's company records and see if we can find any vulnerabilities. I nodded, though he couldn't set see me. Good, I shall be ready, but make sure you keep this quiet. No one can know what we Sept are doing. Understood, he said. But Warren, just know this. You spur playing a dangerous game here. You could end up with nothing. Then I said'll be just like I am now, I said, swallowing hard. I said got nothing to lose. The following days blurred into a haze of meetings and phone calls. My lawyer, my old associate, and I worked together, digging into Tom's financial records, piecing together the puzzle. There were signs everywhere, account discrepancies, missing funds, shell companies hidden in foreign bank accounts. The pieces were falling into place. But it wasn't enough to just expose him. I had to make sure that when the time came, I could take control of his company, take everything he had worked for, and make sure it was mine again. I wasn't going to let a man who had already stolen my family take my legacy too. I spent late nights drafting a plan, thinking through every detail, every loophole I could exploit. There was a way in of that, I was certain. The company's financial mismanagement alone would be enough to make Tom vulnerable. But I needed more than that. I needed his weakness. One afternoon I met with my former associate in a quiet cafe downtown. We sat in the back corner, away from prying eyes. You've got something? I asked, leaning forward. He slid a folder across the table, and I immediately flipped it open. Inside were copies of documents I hadn't seen before. letters, contracts, and a series of emails. There it was, the smoking gun. A communication from one of Tom's partners, discussing illegal kickbacks in exchange for business deals. The evidence was clear. This was it. This was what I needed to bring him down. I sat back in my chair, letting the weight of the moment sink in. We Seth got him. But as the excitement began to build, something else gnawed at me. Something I couldn't ignore. What would this cost? What was I willing to sacrifice to make sure this man paid for everything he'd done? My daughter, could I really win her back after this? I didn't have the answer. But I knew one thing: I couldn't stop now. I spent the next week with my head buried in the details, consumed by the plan. Each step had to be calculated. One wrong move and it was all over. But I had learned from years in business. It was the quiet ones who moved the pieces behind the scenes who won, not the ones who rushed. I knew exactly what I had to do now. First, I needed to infiltrate Tom's company. Not physically, but financially. I had to gain control. To start pulling the strings from within. This wasn't going to be a sudden takeover. It was going to be subtle, a slow, methodical dismantling that left no room for him to fight back. I was no stranger to manipulation. I'd seen it done for years in corporate boardrooms. Wealthy men wielding power like it was a game, but not understanding the real cost of what they did. The difference was that I wasn't like them. I wasn't using this for wealth, not anymore. I was using it for something more important. My family, my dignity. I sat in my office, sifting through the legal documents, contracts, and business proposals that I had saved up over the years. One by one, they told a story. A story of fraud, greed, and corruption. Tom had been hiding it all in plain sight, thinking no one would notice. I smiled, the taste of victory already on my tongue. The plan would unfold piece by piece, and he wouldn't know what hit him. That afternoon, I received a call from my lawyer. Warren, he said, his voice cautious. I set been digging through Tom Sip's financial records. You set right, there's such as a mess here. But we need to be careful how we approach this. It could backfire if we move too fast. I leaned back in my chair, rolling the stress ball between my fingers. I don't have time to be careful anymore. I said, Sep's already taken everything from me. Sep's taking it back. Sep's not going to see this coming. My lawyer hesitated. Just make sure you don't rush it. We start playing in deep waters here. I know what I said doing, I replied. You just keep digging. I need more information. Specifically, I need the bank account details for any shell companies Sep's using. I have a way to freeze his assets, but we need the proof first. He promised to get back to me, and I hung up. The pieces were falling into place. The next day, I met with my former associate. He looked different now, haggard, worn out, but I could see the spark of rebellion in his eyes. We sat in a nondescript coffee shop in downtown Los Angeles, away from prying eyes. You've got what I need? I asked, my voice low. My hands were shaking from the adrenaline, but I kept my composure. I had to. This was the moment. He slid a manila envelope across the table. Everything you asked for. I got the financial documents, the hidden accounts, even some questionable communications with Tom Sip's partners. I opened the envelope carefully. Inside were the pieces that would bring him down. I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction as I scanned the documents. There it was, a payment from a foreign account disguised as an investment, and underneath it a string of emails where Tom's business partners discussed illegal kickbacks. This was more than enough. I closed the envelope and slid it into my bag. This is it. We can take him down now. My associate leaned back, watching me carefully. Just remember, Warren, this isn't just about money. This is about everything. The moment you do this, there's no going back. I met his gaze, the weight of his words settling over me. But it didn't matter. I couldn't go back now. The next few days were a blur. I arranged for my lawyer to file a series of motions that would freeze Tom's assets, and I used my insider knowledge of his business to manipulate his stock options. Every action was a calculated move, designed to bring him to his knees. I wasn't just after his company. I was after his reputation, his empire. I spent hours on the phone with my lawyer, making sure every document, every piece of evidence was in place. The key was to move quickly, before Tom had time to realize what was happening. The slower he moved, the more his empire would crumble. But even as the pieces fell into place, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. This wasn't the victory I'd imagined. There was no satisfaction in watching him struggle. In fact, I felt emptier by the day. I thought back to my daughter. What would she think of all this? Would she even care? Would she ever look at me the same way again? The guilt began to creep in, but I pushed it away. This wasn't about her. This was about me, about proving to myself that I was still worth something. One evening, as I sat in my office, the phone rang. It was my lawyer again. His voice was low, almost cautious. We've made our move. The assets have been frozen, and the first legal motions have been filed. He's going to be feeling the pressure soon. I leaned forward, a smile tugging at my lips. Good. Now, let's see how long it takes for him to crack. But as I hung up the phone, a knot formed in my stomach. It was happening. Tom's downfall had started, and I was the one who had set it in motion. But for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel that sense of triumph I had imagined. I felt nothing. By the time I was ready to make my next move, Tom's world had already begun to crumble. His company was in turmoil, his assets frozen, and his reputation under attack. But even as I watched from the shadows, a small part of me still questioned whether it was worth it. Revenge had started to feel like a cold, hollow victory. It wasn't supposed to feel like this. When I first planned everything, I imagined a sense of triumph, the satisfaction of seeing him brought down to the ground. But now all I could feel was the weight of the consequences. It wasn't just about business anymore, it was personal, and that made everything more complicated. I had to keep going. I couldn't stop now. The worst part of it was, I knew I wasn't just punishing Tom. I was punishing myself too. Every move I made pushed my daughter further away from me, and that thought gnawed at me with every passing day. I had been so focused on the betrayal, on the lies, on the revenge, that I had forgotten the reason I was doing this in the first place. It wasn't for the money. It wasn't for the business. It was for her. But she wasn't seeing it that way. She wasn't seeing me at all anymore. Still, I pressed on. I had to. There was no turning back. The phone call came just after midnight. It was my lawyer, his voice sharp with urgency. Warren, we've got a problem. The board of directors at Tom Sip's company is getting restless. They Sips are beginning to see what Sips's happening. If we don't Sips's act fast, they might take control before you can finish what you Sips started. I could feel my heart rate spike. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the final push to take control. What do we need to do? We've already destabilized him financially, but now we need to take it public. We need to expose his corrupt practices in front of the board and the investors. ISEP arranged a meeting with the major stakeholders tomorrow. It's SEP's now or never, Warren. Tomorrow. It was happening tomorrow. The meeting that would decide everything. I sat there for a long time after the call ended, my mind racing. Exposing Tom's illegal dealings in front of his own people would be the final blow. It would completely destroy his standing, his influence, and any chance of a comeback. But this wasn't just about him. It was about me. This was my chance to show my daughter that I hadn't given up, that I wasn't the man who had failed them. This was my opportunity to reclaim what was mine, to take back control of the life I had once built. The next day, I prepared myself for the meeting. I wore my best suit, the one I hadn't put on in years. The fabric felt stiff and foreign against my skin, but I had to remind myself that this wasn't about appearances. It was about power, and I was ready to take it back. I met with my lawyer and my associate before the meeting. We went over the final details, what documents to present, what information to reveal, and how to break the news to the board. We need to hit them hard and fast, my lawyer said, his voice low. Once they see what we uncovered, they set whole turn on Tom. It sets a game of perception, Warren. We need to make them believe that you're better off with you in charge. I nodded. I had played this game before. I knew how to manipulate the perception of others. But something inside me still lingered, doubt. Could I really do this? Could I tear his life apart and still come out on top? Or would this whole plan backfire? What would it cost me? But I couldn't afford to think about that. Not now, not after everything that had already happened. The boardroom was exactly as I had imagined it, stiff, formal, and suffocating. The faces of the investors, the shareholders, were a mix of curiosity and confusion as they watched me walk in. Tom was sitting at the head of the table, his confident facade barely concealing the panic behind his eyes. He had no idea what was about to hit him. I sat down at the table, my hands resting calmly in front of me. I could feel the tension in the room, the electricity crackling in the air. I looked at Tom, and for a brief moment I could see the fear in his eyes. He was starting to realize that this wasn't just a legal battle anymore. This was a war. I started slowly, carefully. I laid out the evidence, piece by piece. I talked about the fraudulent transactions, the hidden accounts, the kickbacks that he had tried to bury. I watched as the faces of the investors changed, their expressions shifting from confusion to shock to outright disbelief. "This is a betrayal," I said, my voice steady but laced with emotion. "A betrayal of your trust, of your investment, and most importantly, a betrayal of everything this company was supposed to stand for." Tom shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his mask of control starting to slip. But it wasn't enough yet. I wasn't finished. "And now," I continued, "you have the chance to make this right. I stum offering you the opportunity to step aside. I stum taking control of this company, and I will make sure that every penny you sep stolen is returned." Tom opened his mouth to speak, but I silenced him with a sharp look. The room was already turning. The investors were backing me. They had no choice but to. They could see the truth now, and I wasn't about to let him talk his way out of this. The meeting ended shortly after, and the room was filled with murmurs. As I walked out, I couldn't help but feel a small sense of satisfaction. But it wasn't the victory I thought it would be. Tom had been defeated, publicly exposed. His world was unraveling. But as I stepped into the hallway, my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a message from my daughter. "Dad, can we talk?" I paused. I had won, but it felt empty. Could this ever be enough? Was I truly ready to rebuild what I had lost? The days following the boardroom meeting passed in a blur of legal paperwork, financial transactions, and strategic meetings. Tom's world was unraveling before him, and I couldn't help but feel a small, sick satisfaction every time I saw a news headline about the downfall of his company. The legal filings were moving forward. The stock prices continued to plummet, and soon the press would catch on to the story. The sharks would circle, and he wouldn't be able to hide anymore. But there was a strange emptiness to it all. I spent my days glued to the phone, coordinating with my lawyer, my former associate, and my newly appointed team. My hands were shaking with adrenaline most of the time, but there was no room for weakness. I had come too far to turn back now. Yet something was gnawing at me, something that didn't belong in a victory like this. My daughter. I hadn't spoken to her in days, maybe weeks. The last time we'd talked, I had walked away from her plea for us to talk. I knew she wanted answers, but how could I explain to her the path I had chosen? Could I really look her in the eyes and say that what I had done was justified? Could I make her understand the cost of my revenge? Each message from her felt like a knife twisting in my gut. "Dad, I don't understand what ten's going on. Why are you doing this?" I had ignored the first few. After all, what was there to say? But now, each one felt like a call I could no longer ignore. I wasn't just losing a business, I was losing my daughter, too. And that realization hit harder than anything I'd done to Tom. I sat in my office, looking at the phone in my hand. I had tried to shut it out, but the reality was inescapable. The more I won, the more I lost. Was it worth it? Could I really repair what had been broken? The next day, I received a call from my lawyer. "Warren, it sets time. The shareholders have agreed to a vote. They said you're going to approve the takeover." Tom steps out. This is the final step. I leaned back in my chair, taking in the news. The moment I had worked for was finally here. Tom was about to lose everything. His company, his wealth, his influence. The victory I had longed for was just within reach. But still, that nagging feeling wouldn't go away. I looked down at the legal document in front of me, the final draft of the takeover agreement. My name would be at the top. This company, my legacy, would finally be in my hands again. I had won. But as I ran my finger over the paper, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted, something deep inside me. That evening, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at my phone. The silence in the house was deafening. I hadn't heard from her in days. I needed to hear her voice. I needed to hear that, despite everything, she still cared. I dialed her number, my thumb hovering over the call button. What would I say? I'm sorry. Would that even be enough? The phone rang twice before she picked up. I could hear the hesitation in her voice when she answered. Dad? I swallowed hard. Hey, sweetheart. I just wanted to check in. How are you? Her voice was distant, colder than I expected. I Sip's fine, just trying to understand everything that Sip's been happening. I winced. The distance in her words stung. This wasn't just about business anymore. It was about her. And I had pushed her away to pursue my own sense of justice. The realization hit like a ton of bricks. I know this has been hard for you, I said, my voice cracking slightly. I need you to understand why I did it. Tom, he's Seps, not the man he pretends to be. I couldn't just let him keep destroying everything we built. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I get it, Dad. But you sits are not the only one who set's been hurt. You sets been so focused on bringing him down that you sets have ignored the damage you sets have caused to us. To me, I don't hand s know if I can ever see you the same way again. Her words hit me harder than any legal filing, any court victory. I could feel the weight of her rejection pressing down on me. This was the price of my revenge, and I wasn't sure it was one I could afford. I said sorry, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I just wanted you to be proud of me. I'm not proud of you, Dad, she replied, the pain in her voice evident. I'm scared of you. I don't even know who you are anymore. I closed my eyes, feeling the sting of her words settle in my chest. My daughter, the one person I had fought for all these years, had become a stranger, and it was my fault. I sat there in the silence of the kitchen, the phone still pressed to my ear. My daughter's words rang in my head, over and over, until they drowned out everything else. I had won the battle. I had destroyed Tom, but in doing so I had destroyed everything that mattered. As I hung up the phone, I knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The company, the wealth, the respect, none of it meant anything if I couldn't fix what had been broken in my own family. But could I? Could I even try to rebuild what was lost? Or had I already crossed the point of no return? The Thanksgiving dinner was set for 7 p.m., but by 5 o'clock, the tension in the house was already palpable. My lawyer had just finished walking me through the final details. Everything was lined up perfectly. Tom's empire had crumbled. But tonight, in front of family, friends, and the people who had once looked up to him, I was going to finish what I had started. The table was set in the dining room, the smell of roasted turkey and stuffing drifting from the kitchen, but I couldn't taste it. I couldn't focus on anything except what was about to happen. I had invited everyone, my daughter, her stepfather, our closest friends. It was supposed to be a night of Thanksgiving, a family gathering to celebrate the holiday. But I had other plans. And this wasn't about gratitude. It was about justice. I stared at the fireplace, watching the flames flicker. It was easy to get lost in the dance of fire. The flames flickered and died, only to flare up again. It reminded me of everything I had been through. The highs, the lows, the slow burn of betrayal. And just like those flames, I would rise from the ashes. But this time I would do it on my terms. Dad, are you okay? My daughter's voice broke through my thoughts, pulling me back to the present. I turned to face her, forcing a smile. Yeah, just thinking. Her eyes narrowed slightly, suspicion flickering in her gaze. She had no idea what I was planning, and I wasn't sure how to explain it to her. How could I? How could I make her understand that this was the only way to take back what I had lost? Are we really doing this tonight? She asked, her voice soft. I hesitated, then nodded. Yes, we started doing this tonight. She didn't press further, but I could see the uncertainty in her eyes. Her relationship with me had changed, and it felt like every moment of tension between us made her pull away even further. But I had come too far. This was the final move. The dinner was the perfect setting. Everyone would be there, Tom, his supporters, and the few who still cared about me. When I exposed him, it would be in front of everyone. His downfall would be public, undeniable, and absolute. The guests began arriving just before 6. Tom walked in, his usual smug expression plastered on his face. He was dressed to impress, the finest suit and tie, his arrogance clearly on display. But behind the facade, I could see the cracks starting to show, the strain in his eyes, the way he kept adjusting his cufflinks. He knew something was coming. He just didn't know what. "Warren, good to see you," Tom said, offering a hand. I took it, but my grip was firm, a silent challenge. He didn't know it yet, but tonight he would lose everything. "Good to see you too, Tom," I said, my voice calm. "How's Sep's everything going?" "Great. Everything's under control," he replied, though his voice lacked the usual confidence. He knew he was losing control. He just didn't know how badly yet. I watched him move around the room, greeting people with practiced ease, but his discomfort was visible. I could feel my heart rate pick up as the clock ticked closer to 7. It was time. At 7:05 p.m., I stood at the head of the table, ready to make my move. The room was filled with the sounds of laughter and conversation, but everything seemed distant. In the back of my mind, I could hear the echo of my daughter's words from the night she had said, "My new dad is richer." It felt like they were meant to haunt me, to fuel the fire of revenge. But now, as I looked around the room at the faces of the people I had invited, I realized something. This wasn't just about money, it was about respect. It was about dignity, and it was about proving to myself that I wasn't the failure they thought I was. I raised my glass to get everyone Sep's attention. "Thank you all for coming tonight," I began, my voice steady and strong. "I know this isn't Sep, just another family dinner. Tonight is different. Tonight is different. Tonight, I'm going to show you the truth." A hush fell over the room as everyone turned toward me. Tom's eyes narrowed, suspicion growing. "I've spent months, no years, watching one man tear apart everything I've built, watching him destroy the trust, the integrity of my family, and my business. But I'm done being silent, and I'm done being weak," I continued, my voice rising. "Tonight, I'm going to expose the man who's been lying to all of you." Tom's face went white. The color drained from his cheeks, and I could see the sweat forming on his brow. He stood up, but his legs shook as if he couldn't decide whether to walk out or stay and face me. "What are you talking about, Warren?" he asked, his voice wavering. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out the envelope. I placed it on the table, pushing it toward the center. "I kept talking about your fraud, your lies, everything you Sep done behind closed doors to destroy my life. And now it's Sep's time for everyone here to see who you really are." I opened the envelope and slid the documents across the table. The room was silent as everyone leaned forward to examine the evidence. Emails, financial transactions, illegal business deals, all of it was there, laid bare for everyone to see. Tom staggered backward as the room filled with whispers. The shock on his face was unmistakable. He had never expected this. He was a man who had manipulated and controlled, thinking he could escape the consequences. But I had stripped him of his power. "This is a lie," Tom muttered, his voice weak, desperate. "This isn't set real." "It's so real, Tom," I said, my voice cold. The guests were in shock, some staring at Tom, others at me. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Tom's eyes darted around the room looking for an escape, but there was nowhere to go. "My company, my legacy," Tom stammered, his voice cracking. "You can do this." "I already have," I said. "You start done." The room erupted into chaos as the truth sank in. Some people looked at me with admiration, others with disbelief, but all I could feel was the weight of the moment. This was it. Tom had lost. But as I stood there, watching his empire crumble, something gnawed at me. I had exposed him. Yes, I had taken back what was mine, but in doing so I had lost her. As the dinner came to a chaotic end, I stood alone by the window, the weight of my actions settling over me. Tom was gone, his business and reputation destroyed. But in the process, I had destroyed something more important. The one thing I had fought to protect my daughter. I had won the battle, but the war for my family's heart was far from over. The aftermath of Thanksgiving was like standing in the eye of a storm. The chaos from the dinner had settled into a heavy, uncomfortable silence. Tom's empire was in ruins, his reputation shattered, but nothing felt like a victory. I had achieved my goal, exposed him for the fraud he was, but the cost of it all was starting to show. I woke up the morning after, the weight of my actions pressing down on me. The sky outside was overcast, a reflection of the storm brewing inside me. The papers were full of the fallout from the public exposure. Tom's company's stock was plummeting, and investors were pulling out. His business was collapsing, and his former partners were distancing themselves. All the signs of a once untouchable man being dragged through the mud. But none of it mattered. Not anymore. I had taken back what was mine, but what had I truly gained? I sat at the kitchen table, staring at my phone. There were dozens of missed calls and messages, mostly from my lawyer and former associates congratulating me on the victory. But the one message that kept flashing on the screen was from my daughter. "Dad, we need to talk. I'm hurt. Please, can you just tell me why?" It felt like a slap to the face every time I read it. How could I explain it to her? How could I make her understand the reason I had gone so far? I thought I was protecting her, protecting our family, but in doing so I had pushed her away. I had built an empire, but I had destroyed the most important relationship in my life. I spent the next few days avoiding the inevitable. I couldn't face her, not yet. Every time I thought about calling her, the fear of losing her forever paralyzed me. What would I say? How could I explain that everything I did was for her? But the guilt, God, the guilt, kept gnawing at me. This wasn't the way I imagined it would feel. I had spent years chasing success, chasing respect, thinking that money and power would be the answer to everything. But now, as I watched Tom's fall from grace, I realized that it wasn't just about the business. It was about family, love, and loyalty, and I had sacrificed all of that in the name of revenge. I picked up the phone and called my daughter. She answered on the second ring, her voice cold, distant. "Dad," she said, her tone more resigned than angry. "I don't said even know what to say anymore. You Sep ruined everything. For what? For power? For control?" I opened my mouth to speak, but nothing came out. I couldn't find the words. There was nothing I could say that would make this right. I had hurt her. I had betrayed her trust, all for the sake of my pride. "I didn't want to hurt you," I said finally, my voice barely above a whisper. "I just wanted to fix things. I thought if I could take back the company, if I could prove I wasn't set a failure, you set see me the way I used to be, the way I should have been. You don't set get it, do you?" Her voice cracked. "You didn't set have to do this. You think I care about money, about power? I wanted my dad back. I wanted you to be there for me, not for your revenge." Her words hit me like a freight train. Every sentence was a reminder of what I had lost, what I had thrown away in my pursuit of something that never mattered. It wasn't about the company. It wasn't about winning. It was about her, about my family. And now I had nothing. I hung up the phone, the silence in the room deafening. The weight of everything I had done crashed down on me all at once. Tom was gone. His company was mine. But at what cost? What had I really won? I spent the next few days in a fog, going through the motions of meetings, signing documents, and overseeing the restructuring of the company. But none of it felt real. None of it felt like the victory I had envisioned. Every step forward felt like a step further away from the person I used to be, the man I thought I was doing this for. I couldn't help but think of the future. What would happen now? What did I have left to fight for? I had taken control of the business, but I had lost the one thing that mattered most. That Friday, I stood in the hallway of my house, staring at the door. I had been avoiding her for days, but I couldn't do it anymore. She deserved an explanation. She deserved the truth. I knocked lightly on her door. There was no answer, but I knew she was there. I pushed the door open slowly, my heart racing in my chest. She was sitting on her bed, her back to me, staring out the window. Dad, she said, her voice soft, like she had been waiting for me to come. I've been thinking a lot about everything. About you, about me. I don't know if I can ever look at you the same way again, but I want to try. I don't want to lose you, but I need you to understand what you said done. I walked over to the bed, sitting beside her. I said, "I'm sorry," I said, my voice breaking. "I never meant to hurt you. I thought I was doing the right thing, but I was wrong. I should have been there for you instead of chasing something I thought would fix everything." She turned to face me, her eyes wet with tears. "You can fix this, Dad, but you have to show me that you care about me more than anything else. You need to show me that I sep more important than all of this." I nodded, wiping my eyes. "I said I'll do whatever it takes. I don't care about the company, the money, any of it. I just want you back. I want to be your dad again." That night, as I lay in bed, I realized something. I had won the battle, but the real fight had just begun. I had taken back my company, but now I had to rebuild the relationship I had lost. The price of revenge had been steep, but I was willing to pay it. Because in the end, nothing was more important than family. I woke up the next morning to an emptiness that I couldn't shake. The weight of everything, the company, the victory, the broken relationships settled in. It was surreal. Sitting in my office, surrounded by papers, contracts, and deals that had once meant everything to me. I had taken back control, but it felt hollow. The phone buzzed on my desk, dragging me from my thoughts. It was my lawyer. I knew what this call was about. "Warren, that's over," he said, without preamble. "The takeover is official. You are in control now. Tom Set's done. His assets are seized, his company SEP's under investigation, and he SEP's facing charges. We SEP's won." I leaned back in my chair, trying to steady myself. I should have felt a sense of triumph, but it was hard to feel anything. All the things I thought I would get back, respect, power, my daughter's admiration, seemed further out of reach than ever before. I had won everything but lost the one thing that mattered. "Are you still there?" my lawyer asked. "You don't sound too happy." I shook my head, though he couldn't see me. "I don't know what I feeling right now. I thought this would fix everything. But now that it's SEP's done, I don't know what SEP's left." He was silent for a moment. "Warren, you got your justice. Tom SEP's a criminal, and you made sure he pays for what he did to you. But don't lose sight of what this is really about. You got to fix things with your daughter. That SEP's where you need to focus now." I hung up the phone and stared at the empty space in front of me. The company was mine, but it felt more like a prison than a triumph. The weight of my daughter's silence pressed down on me. Every message, every unanswered call was a reminder that no matter what I achieved in business, I had failed as a father. It had been days since I last spoke to her. I couldn't avoid it any longer. I had to face what I had done, what I had lost. I needed to make things right, but I didn't even know where to start. How could I undo the damage I had caused? I dialed her number, my hand shaking as I pressed the call button. It rang 3 times before she picked up, her voice cautious, distant. "Dad?" "Sweetheart," I said, my voice breaking. "I'm sorry. I've been a fool. I thought I could fix things by taking control, by winning back the company, by showing you I could still be the man I used to be. But in doing so, I lost sight of what really mattered. I lost you, and I can't fix that with money, or power, or anything else. I need you to know that I regret everything. I was wrong." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest as I waited for her to respond. "I don't know what you want me to say, Dad," she finally replied, her voice quiet. "I don't know if I can just forget everything. You hurt me. I don't even know who you are anymore." "I'm still your father," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "I made mistakes, but I can't take back what I did. All I can do now is try to make things right. I can't fix the past, but I want to try to fix our future. Please, I want us to start over. I want you back in my life, even if it takes time." She was silent again, and for a moment I feared she might hang up, but then I heard a soft sigh on the other end. "I don't know if I can trust you again, Dad," she said, the pain in her voice clear, but I said I'm willing to try. You have to show me that you mean it, though. You can set, just tell me you set her sorry. You need to prove it. I nodded, even though she couldn't set see me. I still prove it, I promise. I still do whatever it takes. The next few weeks were a blur. The company was mine now, but it wasn't the win I had expected. I spent my time cleaning up the mess Tom had left behind, overseeing the restructuring, and trying to pull the pieces back together. But the work felt hollow. Each contract I signed, each deal I closed, was a reminder that nothing could replace the connection I had with my daughter. I reached out to her every day. Slowly, we began to rebuild our relationship, but it wasn't easy. Trust doesn't return overnight, and every word I said felt like a step forward and a step back at the same time. She was guarded, unsure of whether I was truly sincere or if I was just trying to make up for my mistakes with material things. But I kept trying. I showed up. I didn't promise her the world. I promised her my honesty, and that was a start. One evening, about a month after the dinner, she called me. I wasn't sure if it was to yell at me, to call me out on my mistakes, or if it was something else entirely. My stomach was in knots as I picked up the phone. "Dad," she said, her voice softer than I expected. I sat been thinking, Dane them not ready to just forget everything. But I think we can work through this. I don't set know how long it's up to take, but I am willing to try. A rush of relief washed over me, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt a glimmer of hope. "I said'll wait as long as it takes," I said, my voice steady with the knowledge that I had a long road ahead. "And I said'll show you every day that I said I'm the father you need me to be, not the man I was, but the man I should have been all along." We talked for hours that night, and though there were no immediate answers, I could hear the cracks in her heart starting to heal. The walls I had built up between us were slowly starting to come down, and I realized that justice wasn't about taking everything from someone else. It wasn't about revenge. It was about understanding, about rebuilding, about owning up to your mistakes and making amends where you could. As I sat there that night, reflecting on everything that had happened, I knew one thing for sure: revenge might have given me control of my business, but it was love, honesty, and time that would restore what I had truly lost. It's strange, isn't it? How life can shift in the blink of an eye. One minute you think you have everything figured out, that you're in control, that you're fighting the right fight, and the next you're left standing in the ashes of your own making, wondering how it all went wrong. Looking back, I can't help but ask myself, was it worth it? Was the cost of what I did worth the small victories I've earned? The answer isn't as clear as I thought it would be. When I set out on this journey, all I wanted was justice. I wanted to prove to my daughter, to myself, that I was more than just a failure, that I could still be the man I had once been. And when Tom came into my life, I saw him as a threat. He wasn't just a businessman who had wed my ex-wife. He was everything I wasn't anymore: rich, successful, untouchable. But I realized something too late. He wasn't my enemy, I was. I wasn't fighting him. I was fighting my own inadequacies, my own fears. Every decision I made, every action I took, wasn't about getting back what was mine. It was about trying to fill the void in my life, the void that had been growing since I saw my daughter choose him over me. I remember that night, the Thanksgiving dinner, when I thought that exposing Tom would fix everything, when I thought that taking back control of my company, destroying his empire, would somehow make me whole again. But now, looking back, I can see how wrong I was. The papers were signed. The company was mine. Tom was gone, stripped of everything he had built. But what did I have left? The victory was hollow. I had lost so much along the way: my family, my dignity, my daughter's trust. After everything had settled, I started working on the company again. But it was different now. The deals, the contracts, the numbers, they didn't hold the same meaning. The office I had once spent countless hours in now felt like a prison. I had won back the business, but I had lost my way. Think about my daughter every day. She's still in my life, but it's not the same. The bond we shared is broken, and I don't know how to fix it. There are days when I think I can still make it right, when I hope she'll look at me the way she used to, when I hope she'll understand why I did what I did. But then there are days when I fear she'll never forgive me. I don't know if we'll ever go back to how things were. I don't know if I'll ever be the man she needs me to be, but I'm trying. I'm trying to be better. I'm trying to make amends. When I look at the company now, I realize that it's not the same either. It's not just a business. It's a reminder of everything I've lost, everything I've sacrificed to win. Every meeting, every financial decision. It all comes with the knowledge that I did it all to get back something I could never fully reclaim. The emptiness still lingers. I don't need the money anymore. I don't need the power. What I need, what I've always needed, is my family. I didn't get that back. I'm not sure I ever will. And that's the hardest pill to swallow. Because when you fight for everything, when you tear down the walls and expose the truth, you think that the world will hand you your reward. But sometimes the cost of winning isn't worth the price. There's a saying that's stuck with me for years: revenge is a dish best served cold. But what they don't tell you is that even after you've served it, even after you've tasted it, it doesn't fill you up. It doesn't heal the wounds. It doesn't bring back what you lost. I thought I could fix everything with revenge. I thought I could fix my broken family, my broken self, by making someone else pay for the wrongs they did to me. But all I've learned is that the real cost of revenge is the part of you that gets lost in the process. I can't change what I did. I can't change the choices I made, but I can choose to move forward. I can choose to rebuild, to try to make things right, even if it takes a lifetime. The truth is, I'll never get my daughter back the way I wanted to, but I've learned something even more valuable through all of this. Justice isn't about taking someone down, it's about realizing what really matters, and the most important thing in my life isn't the business. It's the people I love. And if I can't fix what's broken with her, if I can't ever get back the trust I lost, then all I can do is show her that I'm here, that I'm ready to try, that I'm not the man I was before, but I'm someone who's still fighting to be the father she needs. You didn't lose me, you gave me away.